All right, so joined with Steve Beitler now. Your dad was Harold Beitler and Johnny Beitler being your uncle. What can you just tell me about them? They're part of the Skagit Speedway Hall of Fame and were some of the original racers and original parts of Skagit Speedway.
Yeah, you know, both of them back in their youth were hot rodders and stuff. They always had hot rod cars and motorcycles. And then when they started racing probably 3 or 4 years before they built Skagit Speedway, there were several small racetracks around the Northwest. And they raced Oak Harbor, Anacortes, Cedro Woolley, Wickersham. There were several little dirt tracks. I actually even had one right down in Burlington, right where the mall is right now. They built a track down there, but they only ran there once or twice and it went away. But then when they built Skagit, they were on the volunteer crew that come up and put some time in to help build it. And then when they opened on Labor Day weekend in 1954, my dad and my uncle were both in the infield and racing that night, the first race they had.
So what did they race?
Well, back then they were called jalopies, and you know, I like a 37 Chevrolet or whatever those things were. I don't know for sure, but they're just the old jalop. There are several different models and stuff back then, but yeah, that's what they raced.
Is it kind of comparable to a street stock or a Hornet nowadays? Is that kind of what the body was like? A little bit of a jalopy?
Well, it was more of a coupe. The old, more of a coupe style, and you know, there's still one car in existence that Albert Lemley, the first manager, was actually his family car. He bought a brand new 1937 Lincoln Zephyr, and then he made it into a race car, and it got restored. My dad actually owned it for a while, and then after my dad passed away, Brock Lemley bought it and gave it to his dad, Paul Lemley, as a gift, because that was Brock's grandpa's car originally. So that car is still in existence, and it runs, and we've had it out here making laps before around the track, and it's a Lincoln Zephyr. It got the original V12 in it.
Oh, wow.
And but it was, you know, they ran the old coupe style cars back then.
Besides being a racer, it seemed like your dad was kind of was a flagger, an announcer, a photographer. He kind of did it all here, right?
Yeah, my dad liked being involved. He loved this place up here. And like, you know, I was born in February of '59, and I came to my first race in May of '59. And my dad was still racing. And then when, you know, trying to raise a family, there was 3 of his boys at the time, and he decided it was time to quit racing, but he wanted to stay involved, and he became the flagman for a few years, and then he became the announcer for a few years, and then he really had a love for photography. So he started taking pictures, and I remember when he first started being a photographer, and then Jim Raper came to him. He says, "Why don't you set up a little souvenir stand up here and sell your pictures and stuff, because people want to buy it?" So my dad actually, right over here at the North Gate, he had the first souvenir stand that our family ran up here. I'd come up and work. I was, you know, I was probably 9, 10 years old. I worked in that, and I'd start my night out. You know, when I was 8 years old, I went to work here selling programs out here, because the only entrance was right here at the North Gate. So when I was about 8 years old, I started selling programs in a newspaper called Racing Wheels and stuff. And then afterwards, I'd help pick up garbage, just anything I could do to work up here. I just loved being here. Well, then we got the souvenir stand, so I started helping him with that. But my dad was a photographer up here clear up until his last full year was 76.
Wow,
And he was a policeman by trade. And he retired, and then he opened his own investigations business, which took more time than being a policeman. So, and I started racing in '77, so I always teased him that he quit coming up here because he couldn't stand to watch me race. But so he was very involved for, you know, he started racing around 1950 in the Northwest, and then, you know, he was very involved clear up through the late '70s.
And then, kind of, what did Skagit Speedway mean to him?
Well, it was something of pride, you know. He came up here a lot, and then when I bought the racetrack in 2001, he was pretty shocked when I told him I need to tell him something. He came over to my office, and I had Beitler Performance Center then, and I said, "I'm going to buy the racetrack." He just, "What? You're going to buy Skagit?" I said, "Yep." Got the deal done. We're going to sign papers this week. And, you know, he loved it. He spent every night, every race, on top of the tower with me, because I ran the races from on top of the old announcer's booth. And I mean, I bet up until he passed away, I bet he'd only missed maybe 4 or 5 nights the entire 18, 20 years. And a couple of them was because he was in the hospital from a motorcycle wreck in his earlier days. But, you know, he was up here every night. He'd stand up on top, and, you know, he loved this place. It was like his second home, and like my second home. And that was the bond that my dad and I had was the racing. And him and I, we would go to races all over the Northwest. When the IDC tour was going, we'd go down to Elma, we'd go to Spanaway, we'd go up to Langley, BC, we'd go to Evergreen together. So that was something him and I had, and we continued that later in life. The roles kind of shifted. Instead of him taking me to the races, I would take him to the races. And so he was, yeah, he stood up on top here. And in fact, even during COVID, I made sure he sat right here where we're sitting so we could come up and watch the races each night. And then he passed away that fall. So, but he liked Skagit. He was very proud of being a part of the initial opening of it, and to see it grow. Like he said, when they first built it, they figured it'd be like all the other tracks around here, maybe a year or two and it'd be gone. But it just kept going and slowly growing. And you know, with the vision that Albert Lemley had to get started with, and then when Albert passed away, Jim Raper stepped in, and Jim had it. He was about 19 and a half years. Jim was the general manager, promoter. He ran the place, and you know, both of them had great foresight and a vision of what they wanted this racetrack to be. And that's something that, you know, I took and carried forward, because I come up and worked a lot with Jim Raper in high school. And but my dad, you know, he'd see the growth of the racetrack, and you know, it just amazed him of what it turned into from what they first started with.
Yeah. What did that growth look like? How big was he in that growth? What did he do to help?
Well, you know, he was like a lot of other people. You know, my uncle quit racing. He stayed involved, but he was more on the tech committee.
Yeah, he the SRA safety tech.
Yeah,
right?
Safety tech. My uncle was, so both of them stayed involved. But you know, the biggest thing is there was a lot of people that did a little bit. I mean, you got Albert and you got Jim Raper, people like that. They did a lot, you know. But you had a lot of the stockholders, Charlie Coughlin, and you know, people like that were heavily involved. But I mean, there's a lot of people like my dad that all contributed a little bit, but everybody contributing a little bit became a lot. And that's what really helped the growth move forward with the track. You know, my dad would, when he was the photographer, I mean, I remember we'd take pictures here, we'd run home that night, and I'd go out in his darkroom with him because he had his own processing. He processed all his own pictures. So we'd get the film developed and stuff, then we'd run over to the newspaper and drop them off in their night drop so we could get pictures of the races in the paper the next day. Yeah. And back then they were racing on Friday nights here, so they had a Saturday paper. They didn't have a Sunday paper yet. And like my dad said, if it doesn't go in until Monday, that's old news. So he would literally go home after the races, develop the film, print some shots. He'd run over and drop the film off at the newspaper's drop box so we could have pictures of the races in Saturday's paper.
All right, so you kind of mentioned your uncle, Johnny Beitler, who's also part of the Skagit Speedway Hall of Fame. What was his impact on Skagit Speedway?
You know, back then, because all the cars were home built, and some people are better fabricators than others. And, you know, my uncle was a pretty good fabricator and welder and stuff, so he understood that. And being on the safety crew and the tech crew and stuff, it was their job to make sure the cars were safe. And like I said, back then, you didn't have speed shops. I mean, the biggest speed shop they had back in those days was Arts Auto Wrecking. I mean, most of the guys, seriously, a lot of race cars at Skagit Speedway, they needed spindles or hubs and things. They'd go down to Arts and dig through his junkyard and find them.
Really?
So the tech crew back then was really important, because stuff is just mounting the steering gear. I mean, a guy broke his leg down here one time and his steering gear wasn't mounted right, so they were part of changing that so that could never happen again. And you know, seat belt mounting, just the biggest thing was not so much keeping them within the rules, which was important, but just making them safe for the drivers.
Okay. Was that kind of some of the first ever really versions of teching cars and teching some of that safety?
Yeah. Back then, yeah, the safety part of it was the big thing that a lot of them were concerned with. And that was the early stages of it, because a lot of racetracks, it's just, you show up and you run, you didn't even know what the motors were or anything. You just, if they would run around the track, you got to do it.
Okay.
And but you know, they would tech this, you know, the seat mounts and seat belts and things like that.
What does it mean to you to have not only your dad but your uncle in the Hall of Fame now?
I was very proud to do that. They were in my first class that I put in, and you know, I looked at the different people, guys like Bud Morgan that, you know, went from being a driver to being a flagman, and Bud was very involved with maintenance. You know, he was an electrician, a high wire guy, and he'd take care of all the speakers and lights and stuff. But a lot of the people that went in the first go around, I thought were the people that was really the foundation of launching this. It's like when you start a new business, your initial crew is what's going to make or break you. You get a bad crew, you're going to probably fail. And that's what I really looked at with the first group of inductees that we put in. And, you know, with my dad and my uncle, they were both very, very honored to be in that group. And they, you know, they're very humble. My dad was a very humble man, and he told me, he goes, I just don't think I should be in there. I didn't do that much. So I sat him down and pointed out what he really did. Well, I just did that because I liked it, wanted to help out. I said, well, that's why you're going in the Hall of Fame. I'll quit arguing. And so it meant a lot to him, because I gave them all jackets with their name in the Hall of Fame class of whatever year it was we started that deal. And he wore that jacket. He wore that jacket all the time. He was very proud to wear that jacket.
That's really cool. Well, Steve, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it. I really do.
Thank you.